Tracy, so let's talk about this. What are the next steps as far as Chauvin? What happens to him?
So, as Ben mentioned just a few minutes ago, the next step is sentencing. So, in a couple of months, in about 8 weeks, Officer Chauvin will return to the courtroom to be sentenced. And his sentence could range, as we've heard, from 12 and a half years to 40 years based on the statutes under which he was convicted, and the judge will take into consideration all the factors at play when deciding how long he should go to prison. He'll certainly consider the fact that Officer Chauvin doesn't have a lengthy record and doesn't have a violent criminal history, but he will also consider the circumstances surrounding this case, the public nature in which it happened. He'll consider whether children were present when this incident occurred. He'll consider whether Officer Chauvin, to what extent he abused his authority, that he inflicted cruelty upon Mr. Floyd, et cetera. So all of those factors will be in play. And like Ben said, the judge is well positioned to really make a statement with how he treats this from a sentencing aspect, now that the jury has come back with a verdict.
And we heard Ben mention it a little bit there, but, in the past, it's been a very, very small percentage of something like this turning out the way it did when it comes to police officers in this situation. So what makes this case different in the fact that, he was found guilty on all three of these charges?
Well, I'm very hopeful that one of the differences, is this tipping point of the times that we're in. Certainly, it was different in the sense that it was very public, it was very recorded. It wasn't a split second situation in which an officer had to make a quick decision, like the case of Chicago where the young man's hands up, did he have a gun, et cetera. This was an excruciating 9 minutes in which the officer heard pleas from bystanders, heard pleas from Mr. Floyd himself, and continued the actions that led to death. And so in many ways, this was an easier case for the jury, considering the reasonableness of an officer's actions. I think it was hard for people to view these actions as reasonable. So I think that made this case different. And again, I'm hoping that, I said this last night, when I talked about this incident last summer, one of the questions that I was asked consistently was whether I think that this time is different, whether we're living in a moment of real sea change, a real tipping point. And I said, we'll see, We'll see what happens in this case. We'll see if charges are filed. We'll see if there's a conviction. And now charges were filed. There has been a conviction, and we will see where this takes us from there. But I said this is an easy case, but it wasn't so long ago, less than 100 years ago, the public state-sanctioned killing of a Black man would not have necessarily ended this way, So I'm hopeful that we are moving forward, albeit incrementally.
In your expert opinion, do you foresee anything other than life in prison?
Life in prison for the officer, for Mr. Chauvin?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So he's not. So 40 years, I don't know that he'll get life in prison based on the charges that are at play here and based on all the other factors. The highest cap for the highest murder charge he had was 40 years. But I do expect and hope that the judge will, kind of consider this seriously and send a message to other officers and to society that Mr. Floyd's life mattered, and that we really, really have to change the way police interact with communities and the way that we as society, interact with it and view communities of color.